in this webinars. So without any further delay, I'll hand over these sessions to Richard. It's over to you, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you, Shekhar, and thank you everybody for joining in this session. Before starting, let's do a quick checkup. So can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's amazing. So welcome everybody. Today we will talk about PI planning, also known as big room planning, and 7, let's say, pains that I personally had from experience as Shrikar was mentioning from, let's say, applying these ceremonies among 3 different companies during the last 3 years. So let's start. And let's start here with a connection activity. So for the ones that have used Menti and for the ones that haven't, let me invite you to open in your cell phones like these people are doing, or in your another, let's say, tab of your Chrome or the browser that you like to use, and go to menti.com, and I will be sharing this as well in the chat window here. So let me get to the chat, and I will be putting here the link, menti.com, and we will be using this code 2371796. Cool. Why are we going to do this? Because it's good to have feedback since the very beginning, and it's good to see the audience that we have today. So the question is, what is your experience with PA plannings, also known as big room plannings? We have 4 options. I have heard about them, I have read about them, but never been part of one. I have been a participant in at least one PI planning, and I have been a co-facilitator in at least one PI planning. So notice there is a different setup of options here, from, let's say, the most novice to the most experienced, and it's good to know in advance what is the audience that we have now, as it is important to, let's say, customize the session in order to make this effective for all of you. And for that, we have also one tool in the background, which is this timer. So we will spend 2 more times to get your feedback for this question. So what is your experience with PA plannings? So far, we have half of the people, let's say, more than half, that have been participants and facilitators in at least one PA planning. Cool. So let's say we have still people that haven't heard about them. So we will do a very quick introduction. In fact, what we call in SAFe the PA planning or the big room planning is what the creator of SAFe, Dean Leffingwell, calls the secret sauce of SAFe. And I have to say, based on experience, that this is probably truth, because it is very powerful to have a session where people are focused during 2 days, okay, on what are their teams going to achieve in the next quarter. This is, in summary, what we have as PI planning. So it's an event that comes, let's say, from the SAFe framework, and that invites the team to stop their work and start thinking about planning, not in a sprint planning, but let's say in a set of sprints, up to 4, 5, 6 sprints. Let's say if we accommodate this like per year, it will be per quarter. So we'll be, let's say, doing this exercise 4 times per year. And of course, we will bring to this exercise all the teams, not just the senior management, also the executors, because we need to get feedback from the executors. And the main purpose of having this, all the team together, is to have transparency, to have alignment, and to think about program execution. Okay, so this is, notice these are 3 out of 4 values from SAFe. Okay, in order, the 4th value in SAFe is built-in quality, but this is something that we will do during the execution. But specifically for the PA planning, what is the PA planning? It's an event that will take 2 days, okay, where everybody is together planning what we are going to do in the next quarter. Okay, and of course we will continue the conversation, and we will have, of course, some space for questions at the end, because the purpose of this session is also that is to have, let's say, interaction. So thank you for your participation here. We see that half of the people have been part of the PA planning. That's great. And the next question here is the following. So let me go to that next one, and let me present this. So notice it's the same menti.com, is the same code. And here we are asking, what is the biggest challenge that you bring to this session? So you have been part probably of a PA planning, and you have been probably even co-facilitated a PA planning. So what is your main pain? What is, because we will talk about pains here. We'll talk about 7 pains. And probably you have your own pains, and probably this will be similar to the ones that we will revisit here, or probably this will be different. So this is also important. What is the biggest pain or the biggest challenge that you bring to this session? As I was, while people connect, as I was mentioning, the fact of having a PA planning is actually to have space for the team to, first of all, share all the executive vision and the product management vision and the technical vision together. Okay, so we start planning what are we going to do in the next 4, 5, 6 sprints. Okay, so this is the main purpose of this. Cool. So seems there might be an issue with the link. No, it's not there. There is clearly, we are getting feedback. There you go. Perfect. So dependencies, dependence mapping, dependencies not identified. Perfect, perfect. And we will talk about this for sure. Thank you very much for your feedback. Dependencies is something that every team has to deal with. Let's say every big team that, of course, is working in such a complex product that needs to have more than 2 Scrum teams on it. Unclear requirements, priority changes after PI. That's a great one. That's a great one. And if, in fact, we will talk about this in this meeting. Bring leaders to the meeting. Wow. Yes, I have been that too. We'll see that. Vision, capacity utilization, feature dependency, estimates, budget, people engagement. Excellent. People engagement, especially nowadays in this kind of virtual environment. No? How do we engage people? So I hope that during this session, we can also share tips on how to engage people. In fact, we are using one of the tips that we normally use in the ceremonies we bring. Start with a connection activity like this one. Menti is very useful for this. There are other activities as well, but please, during the first 5-10 minutes of every session, especially if this is a virtual session, bring the voices to the table, bring the voices to the meeting. Because if you don't do this, you are implicitly telling the message that you are going to be the only one that will be talking during the meeting. Okay, so great. Thank you very much for your feedback. We will, of course, start building on top of what you mentioned, and then let's move forward here and let's continue with this. So something very interesting that we should have clear in every meeting is the purpose, the outcomes, and what is in for me. So this is something that probably you are asking yourselves, why I am going to spend part of my afternoon or my morning, depending on where you are, in this meeting. So we will learn about 7 impediments, 7 pains, 7 anti-patterns, call it how would you like to call it, okay? That will help you improving on the preparation and execution of your PI plannings from now on. And also, and this is, let's say, a challenge that I will be offering you as well, you will take with you a poster, okay? A poster with these 7 impediments. And in order to do that poster, because we are in a virtual environment, I invite you in the next, let's say, 1-2 minutes to look for a sheet of paper, okay? Look for a sheet of paper. Probably you have a sheet of paper near your your desk, or a sheet of paper near the printer that you've been using for the homeschooling for your kids. So we will need a piece of paper to do this poster. Why are we going to do this? Because again, this is going to be an interactive session. I don't plan to talk more than 5 minutes here without doing an interaction, whether it's a question or whether it's an exercise. Cool. So I hope you have now a sheet of paper next to you. What we are going to do, we will start creating this poster. So let me invite you to put this sheet of paper, let's say, to put it in 2, okay? Then do it again, maybe 3 times, like this. So when you extend your piece of paper, we will have a poster, okay, with 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 5, 7, 8. Okay, so we'll be using 7 of these rectangles here in order to do your poster. Why is this important? Because we as adults, we learn more when we write. And I will be inviting you to write, and not just write, but draw, because our brains are really good, really effective when we ask them to remember images. And this is what we are going to do here. Okay, so 7 panes, we will be using 3 to share the main panes before the PI planning, 3 to share the main panes, let's say, during the PI planning, and 1 last to share the main panes after the PI. So it's going to be 3, 3, 1, okay? So let's go for it. Before the PA planning, okay? And I like this saying from Roger Maris that says, you hit home runs not by chance, but by preparation, okay? So you already mentioned this in the meeting, okay? The first pain that you will have is that you describe the PA planning to your executives, you describe the PA planning to your audience, to your product owners, to your product managers, and they will say, 2 days? Are you sure? Everyone is too busy for that. Let's do it shorter. Let's do it 6 hours, at most 1 day. I mean, I have too many things in my calendar to spend 2 days without doing them. And this is the very first, let's say, challenge that you will find when you try to implement these two. I had the chance to be in the SAFE Summit in the US, the Global SAFE Summit, for the last 3 years. My first SAFE Summit was in 2017 in San Antonio, Texas. And I was in my first PI planning. I was attending this SAFE Summit because one of the pains that I had is that it was very hard for me to understand. And if you don't understand, probably you don't believe in why we needed to have 2 days for a PI planning. And in every interaction with a coach, with a participant, with a Scale Agile staff team member, I ask this question. So can't we do this in less time? Because this question is a question that I was getting from my stakeholders, let's say. And everybody told me, no. I mean, you can negotiate anything, but having 2 days for the PA planning is key. And after that learning there, coming back and understanding why we need this, and believing in it. And let me share with you, we need this because even we do a lot of preparation, we will find new learnings in our first day. And we need this, let's say, end of day and good night to rest, and let's say end of day to do coordinations in order to apply the learnings in the next day. Many examples of this, and let me share here one that I had. So I was in one of the let's say clients that I had. The senior management said, okay, so we will spend 6 hours on this and no more. And I was clearly convinced that this was going to be a not good way to start, let's say, our PA planning in the team, because I told them, notice that you will find elements that you will need to change in the evening for sure. And we will need to have at least 8 hours to adequate, to adjust, to adapt all these learnings for our second day. In fact, during that, well, they were convinced. During that evening, we identified that the way how we structure our train or our team of teams or our tribe or whatever, let's say you call this big team of teams that we have, okay, was not good because we were missing many more team members there. And we got the chance to invite them for the next day because it was clear that we were having too many external dependencies. And you came also from this idea, what if we have dependencies? Yes, you will find dependencies in the first day, and probably you will find that you have dependencies from a person or a team that is not there. And how are you going to deal this if you do this in just 6 hours? So this is why this is key. This is very important. This is something that is non-negotiable, to have everybody being there 2 days. So what we are going to do here is, in order to remind this element and to summarize this, to debrief this, we will just draw a big number 2 here. Okay, so this is the first element that we have, 2 days. And this is what we will do. Cool. Please, this is something that is not negotiable. Even now, and I would say even now more in this virtual environment, it is key to have this space to have this planning. Yes, and I have been in a second customer where they have been trying to do preparation in advance, but even when doing that, it is key to have, let's say, at least 2 big spaces to have these learnings and this adaptation in the middle. Okay. Second pain, and this comes from the Scrum Masters. Normally, Scrum Masters are very, let's say, savvy on Scrum, and when they see safe, they say, okay, so that could be something similar to what I already do. No, we have been doing sprint planning several times. Thus, we are ready for our first PA planning event. I was a Scrum Master. Also, I am a Scrum Master now. I've been also as playing as Agile consultant, Agile coach, RTE. You can see that sometimes being in one single team, being the Scrum Master for that one single team, you are too focused on making this team awesome, making this team great. But when you have this local focus, you lose the holistic focus that you should have. And specifically in SAFe, it's much better to have, let's say, if you have a team of 5 teams, to have 5 good teams than just one great team and 4 teams that are mediocre. So this is why, and this is where we should start thinking about holistically. We should start as one of the SAFe values mentioned. We need to think about program execution. It's not about mission or let's say a Scrum team or you know, we are not at the team level here. We are more about the team of teams level. So please, and here is very important, and I agree with the Scale Agile team on this, that it is key to prepare for a PA planning. First, you need to train on what is going to happen on the PA planning. Especially if you are starting a PA planning, please don't start executing the PA planning. Have, ideally, would be a 2-day training, like a leading safe for all the team, or a safe for teams for all the team. If not, bring an experienced SPC, an experienced trainer that can bring you a simulation of a real PA planning. Why is this important? Because in the simulation, you will find similar pains that you will go through a real PA planning. And you will let the Scrum Masters understand that this event is far from being sprint planning, because you will get much more external stakeholders. You will get the technical stakeholders. You will get the executive. You will get the program manager. You will get different visions that normally you don't have in a sprint planning, and you need to have them because you're planning for 6 sprints, for 5 sprints, for 1 quarter. You're not planning for just 2 weeks. So this is also key. So remember on this, train your Scrum Masters, because they will help you. They will help you during the co-facilitation of these events, especially nowadays when we are in a virtual environment and we rely on technology. Yes, it's great to have the RTE, or to have, let's say, the main facilitator of this, but the RTE is not going to deal with more than 40 people in a virtual room. So notice, and it's great to have this co-facilitation, because the co-facilitators will help you with the logistics, with the technicalities, with the technology breaks. So they will be helping on that. So the RT, let's say, focuses on the process, and the Scrum Masters focuses in that every team, or every mission, every, let's say, local team will have a smooth experience here. Okay, so notice this is also something that it's key. Prepare before you have your first PA planning event. M. Campbell Pretty is an author that is, let's say, very safe. I'm looking for one of her books here. There you go. So is the author of this book, The Art of Avoiding a Train Wreck. She comes from Australia. Probably you know her. She mentions about an experiment that she did, and actually something that is working for her, and she recommends this in her books, to have this quick start. So you have 1 week, okay, where the first 2 days you do this training, could be, say, for teams training, and let's say the next 2 days you start with the PA planning, the real PA planning. I have done this. This is, let's say, personally, I also believe, based on experience, that this is a proper way to start a PA planning, especially for the teams or for the trains that are starting their first PA planning. This is a proper way for sure. Cool. So let's go back to our poster here, okay? And let's do this on the back of this. So I will do this here, like this. So it will be like a person that is in a whiteboard. So the fact that you need to have preparation, you need to have training in order to start this. That probably the outcome of this second pain, or the learning from this second pain, is train your facilitators, train your Scrum Masters, train your product owners. There was an opportunity in Mexico where we had the chance to facilitate this for 2, let's say, in 2 different courses: the leading safe team, or the leading safe course, and the pro owner training. And that was just, let's say, for pro owners, because we need also to help understand pro owners, how their collaboration will be important here, and that they need to collaborate with this product manager also. Third element here. So I think we are good on time. Yes, the book name is The Art of Avoiding a Train Wreck. Thank you very much for that. Cool. Okay, so let's, before we start to the third one, I think we have some questions here. So this program increments PI, the final PBIs for each sprint, how is it agile? Okay, Sadik, it's commenting about, so how is it okay to define all PBI for each sprint? How is it agile? And this is actually pen number 4 or number 5. So please bear with me. We will get there in a minute. Okay, thank you for that. So number 3. Thank you. So features are not ready, but we can figure them out during day 1 of PI planning. And this is a product manager. This is a product manager that hasn't done his homework, let's say. You will get this probably, the fact that people will think, okay, so we have 2 days. That this is plenty of time to do some grooming. And it's not going to be the case. And this is where preparation is key. Notice that in SAFe, we have kind of a hierarchy of requirements here. So we have, let's say, the epics, which are the big initiatives, like we call this in Scrum also, or in Agile in general, right? We have at the very end, we have the user stories, right? So normally we talk about epics and user stories, but SAFe creates something in the middle that is features. And so we have features that are the parent of the user stories, and features, of course, at the same time are the child of epics. Okay, so one of the inputs that we need to have for a PI planning event is the top 10 features. Okay, and notice I'm clearly mentioning here that features and epics do not have the same level of detail. An epic, you could do this probably in 6 months, in 8 months, in 1 year. This is the time that will take you to finish an epic. A feature, the main characteristic of a feature is that you need to finish this feature in a PI or in a quarter. This is the main characteristic of a feature. So notice that
can we say as an MVP? Can we think as an MVP?
That's a good point. In fact, the term MVP is a term that I would like to probably use more, the term minimal marketable feature, the MMF, because the issue with the, and this is some, let's say, term that I have been issues lately, the minimum viable product. I think that product is not the proper term, right? I would add more, let's say, the minimal, or I will use more the minimum marketable feature. And of course, Sadik, you can start using probably user story map to identify what is the walking skeleton and get to this. But notice that if we think about delivering in an incremental, iterative way, yes, we need to focus on what is the probably the MVP version of this main epic, let's say. Okay, so yes, we can rely on this as long as this MVP does not extend beyond the PI or beyond the quarter. So this is something that, notice that in order to get there, you need to have preparation. And there was this opportunity when we arrived with a customer to this PI planning event with epics, not features. And oh boy, it was really painful because we didn't have the enough detail so that teams could start working. So notice, in order to get into a PI planning, you need to support, let's say, your product manager, your community of product owners, or the people that represent, let's say, the voice of the customer, and you need to work with them in order to start distilling, or let's say, working on the features that you need, that will of course come from the epics, but you need to have this detail in advance. And of course, notice that, and this will happen in practice, notice that as soon as your PI planning event finishes, your first sprint will start. So notice that some teams are even getting not to the feature level, but also to the user story level for the first 2 sprints. So in the first 2 sprints, you should have, and notice that this is also a good, let's say, aspect of every product backlog. You don't need to groom or to refine all the product backlog, but it is good, it is healthy to have, let's say, groom the next 1-2 sprints of your product backlog. When we say it's good to have refined, it's good to have the user stories with complete acceptance criteria in order to start. So this is going to be also part of your inputs when we talk about features that should be ready for your PI planning event. So notice in this, for this third element, what I will be doing here is I will be using some of these, let's say, Lego things here, and I will be creating a tower of Legos, where I am saying that actually this tower of Legos is an epic. You should have clearly defined features. And notice that a feature can also have acceptance criteria, which probably will come up or turn into user stories there. But this is something important that you need to have in mind. So notice, and this is the last of the first 3 elements before preparation. So we are saying here the fact that you will have a lot of, let's say, doubts and you will get a lot of, let's say, questions about why do you need to spend 2 days on this. This is key because you need to have this time to adjust between these 2 days. You need to have training, especially for your facilitators and your POs, and you will need to come up with the top 10 features, groom or refine in a way that you can start your sprint later. So remember to have at least, let's say, 2 features or sorry, let's say 2 sprints, okay, ahead in order to identify what are the user stories that you will have. So this is also, let's say, a way of having a healthy product backlog, whether you are using SAFe or not. Cool. So this is, let's say, the 3 first elements before starting the preparation. Now let's go to the question that that Sadik had, and I think Sadik, yours is number 5, so we'll go with number 4. During PI planning, what will happen during PI planning, and what's going to be some of the pains that you will have during PI planning? So here it goes, Juan, and this is the first that I had. So you will get one architect, okay, during the PI planning that will tell you, hey, the best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. This is part of our Agile manifesto. This is part of one of our 12 Agile principles. So we should rely on the savvy, let's say, of the teams. Okay, are you sure that this is going to happen for a team of more than 40 people? No, I mean, this is where, when we do, let's say, this inspection in the Agile Manifesto, the Agile Manifesto was written in 2001 and was more focused to be, let's say, applied to small teams. Specifically, this principle is the principle that SAFe has revisited, and SAFe recommends to actually separate what is architecture and what is design. Let me share the experience with that I had at a customer that was a bank in this case. So we have this big bank of 16,000 employees, okay, and they realized that they have been working in several silos of the bank by creating similar systems and similar components, let's say, processes, like for instance, giving a loan or withdraw or do a withdrawal. So notice that instead of centralizing all these processes or all these APIs onto one set of a catalog, let's say, they were doing this. So what they had is they had its own project to come up with a centralized set of APIs that, independent of the team, of the platform, of the, let's say, a device, they were going to be able to identify what is the core elements. And for that, they created this strong team of architects where they have as a product owner one of the most senior architects in this bank. It's a bank in Peru with more than 100 years. And notice that in their, what I like so much is that in every PI planning that they appeared or they were part of, notice that I was mentioning in a PA planning, especially the first day, let's say the first morning, you will listen the purpose of what you are going to do from your executive, the vision of what's going to happen to your product during this quarter from the product manager, and the technical architecture railway, let's say, of what you have already in place and what you need to, let's say, the technical guidelines, because you need to have, when you are scaling, you need to have technical guidelines in place. You cannot just scale and, let's say, be in agile and it will be a disorder. So you need to have the technical elements in place in order to, let's say, seize these opportunities and foster these same, let's say, APIs. In this situation, it was a set of APIs that this bank was creating in order to share them with the team, and it was using actually an analogy on what they were working on in order to actually convince the team members that it was key to have this architecture in place, to have this infrastructure in place, to have this catalog of APIs in place, so they knew about it and they could use it or reuse it, and they could, let's say, not create the circle or the tire again in the let's say in the future. So this is why this was key. And this is something that is also key. I have been also in PI plannings where the architect comes without any preparation, without any slides, without anything, and he's or she or she's kind of he or she does not understand the importance of their role in this session. And this is why it's important, and I mentioned about this good experience that we had in this bank. So this is, we get to the question here, and let me read this question back, again. So define all PBIs for each sprint. How is it agile? Yes, and actually responding to change over following a plan, says one of the 4 values of agile. And if you see this program board, which is this artifact that SAFe has in order to, let's say, identify what are the dependencies, and you can even come up and say, hey, but notice we are going back to waterfall here because we are planning all the 4 sprints that we have at the PI and PBI, and I understand from PBI, let's say your product backlog item that could be user stories. So we are planning user stories for all sprints. So how are we going to be agile? And this is something that probably our participant here, Sadik, will say, or probably also a skeptic developer when he's presented to SAFe multi-iteration planning. And again, the fact of having PI plannings doesn't mean that you won't have sprint plannings. We had this experience from a South African manager in the last SAFe event that we were sit in the RTE course, and she said, okay, so I mean, there was a time that I had to do a PI planning, and after the first sprint, I realized that requirements changed, and we had to do a PI planning again. I mean, it's not that you do this and you do not revisit this. You are revisiting this in every sprint planning, and things will change. And actually, this is one of the elements that you will see, that things will change here. So let me, and we will go there in a minute, but let me go back to your poster here, and let me first create the next one, which is going to be the architecture. So let's put here a bridge, okay? The importance of having, let's say, the takeaway from this pane would be the importance of having the technical architects well prepared in this PI planning. And in this element of responding to change over following a plan, the fact that you will have sprints like this, okay? But notice that having this big PI planning at the beginning doesn't mean that you won't revisit this again in your sprint plannings that you will have here. So it's important to mention that responding to change over following a plan is key. And this remains valid, let's say, in this safe environment. And if I can, let's say, move forward and talk about this, when we talk about safe tries to bring the business near to IT. And safe doesn't rely too much on velocity, but relies more on business value to the PI objectives. And this is something that we do normally in the, let's say, we start drafting the PI objectives in day one, but in day two is where we have the business stakeholders with us. And what they do is once they start visiting, let's say, the individual local teams and their boards that they have configured, they start bringing business value to each of the objectives that this team has. And notice that this business value, normally, what it will bring is, it will bring, let's say, more information for the team to identify, okay, what makes sense for the business, what makes sense for the end customer. So this will also bring more context on what is more important. So, and why is this important? Because if we don't have this in place, we will be getting into production assumptions in prioritization from the developers. So this is why this is important. This is bringing, again, closer the business side from the technical side. But still, business value to PI objectives are set in stone. And this can be probably thought from a business owner that won't meet the team until the PI system demo. The system demo is the demo that you have at the PI system demo is the demo that you will have at the very last sprint of your PI. Now, and this is one great learning that we had from the team, from the specifically from the RTE training, let's say. We had this with Audrey Boyston. Audrey is an amazing, let's say, trainer and consultant, and the key takeaway of that, let's say, training was the fact that this PI or this business value is actually a sense to measure predictability. Okay, to have a sense of program predictability, not just team predictability with velocity, but program predictability. The fact that you have at the very end, let's say, because at the very end in your retrospective of the PI, okay, in your inspect and adapt event, you have part of the event besides the demo that you do to revisit, let's say, some metrics, and to revisit how was the real, let's say, how was reality compared to planning, how much of this business these, let's say, objectives, these PI objectives and the business value behind these PI objectives we achieved. Okay, and notice that if we didn't achieve that much, it's not a measure of productivity of the team. It's not a measure of productivity of the business. It's just a fact that things change. And this is a measure of predictability of our training. Okay, so notice that these PI objectives should not be set in stone. And for that, I will be, let's say, drawing something that is like a stone here to remember this. Okay. Last, because I think we have just 10 minutes, so we are also getting to the last, and I would like to have some some minutes for questions. So after PI planning, so plans are nothing, planning is everything. Okay, cool. So that means that as soon as you finish your planning, it will be deprecated because some new things will happen, some new learnings will get, you will get new discoveries. So this is, I think, and I put it here at last, but this is kind of my biggest takeaway that I would like to share. And this is, I will even, let's say, draw what it means. Okay, and what I'm drawing here is a heart, okay, with some fire inside. Okay, and this actually will represent courage. And what is that courage? So at the very end of your PI planning event, you will have the chance to ask for feedback of your team, of the people that will be committed to delivering this in the next quarter. If you get a 2 or a 0 or a 1 like this one, don't apply wishful thinking, which is, hey, we can accept the risk. Things will improve over time. No way. Believe me, I have lost predictability in the sprint, trust, relationships. Notice how this built on top of the other. If you are not predictable, you are losing trust with the business. If you are losing trust with the business, you are probably losing a customer. So notice, this is the key moment where even if the team members are tired or are hurried to finish the PI, this is where you need to revisit the planning, identify why this is happening, and of course, please do not blame. The idea is to put blame aside of the table and actually start probably not asking the person that gives a 2 or a 1. I mean, you probably know more than anybody how is this person. If this person is outspoken, please ask him or her. But if not, ask the whole team. So why do you think this person may feel this, or what are the learnings that we have? And this is key. This is key because this is the perfect moment to adapt. After that, it's going to be very difficult. So I think this is the last one. Thank you very much. I think we are still on time, Sikar. So I will invite the questions now and see what we can share.
Sure. So here we are at the last of the webinar and we are ready to take the questions from the participants. So anyone having questions, they can directly come and they can ask your queries.
So what is the difference between plan and planning? Are you saying plan means frozen or planning means it's a continuous exercise?
Thank you very much. Yes, Raja, correct. You nailed it. Yes, in fact, sometimes plans are this, Microsoft project, let's say, schedules that we have, or Gantt charts that we have, and we used to be, let's say, used to invest. I am a former project manager, and I remember that we used to have, let's say, some customers that had their PMO offices, that one of the key artifacts to, let's say, start the project, you need to have this Gantt chart, this updated Gantt chart. So I would probably mention that these plans are this set of artifacts that we have. Planning is actually a verb, and it's actually the action of revisiting, of learning, of inspecting, of adapting, of what Scrum mentions, empirism, applying empirism. So that is the difference. Thank you for that.
So here we have next question from Vivek. He was asking what should be done in PI planning 5, fifth step. I suppose he wants more clarifications on the fifth step.
On this here, yes. So responding to change over following a plan. Yes, this is something that normally, again, I am not a safe vendor here for sure. And nowadays, in my role as a Scrum Master, I also realized that companies should not be kind of trying to apply a framework in a perfect way. Companies should learn what this framework is about, identify what components from this framework make sense to them, and at some point start customizing these elements for the gain of the company. Because the end goal here is not to become safe experts. The end goal here is to use safe as another tool, like the many tools that we currently have, in order to see how we can improve on this. And this specifically, this PI planning and this program board, which is actually one artifact or one outcome that we will get from the PI planning event. And for the ones that haven't been in this PI planning event or haven't read about it, normally in a PI planning event, you have two inputs. You have the vision for this next quarter, and you have your top 10 features. And you have as output, let's say, you have this program board, which is the holistic way of seeing what the teams are going to encounter and the dependencies that they will have in the next quarter. And you will have the individual, let's say, team objectives, or what the RTE after the PI planning needs to sum up in the PI objectives. So specifically on this, I have had many different, let's say, kind of smiles, or let's say some smiles or some complaints as well, especially from developers that say, hey, I mean, this is not agile. And again, it's a matter of being open. I would say it's a matter of being open here. It's a matter of, hey, we are not becoming safe evangelists here. That is not the purpose of the company. We are experimenting with this new tool, see what we can get from it. If this can give us, let's say, broader vision, because I have seen also some companies that have the vision that they have is until the next sprint, and that's it. And probably this is not a proper way to execute, because this will kill the motivation from the team as well. So this could bring you a bigger vision, but always notice having this balance. And this balance, you will get this balance with experience, not with more certifications, or not with more. You need to have this balance with more experience. Just experience and the fact that you will have these gains or learnings from the culture of your team, from the culture of your organization. This is how you will be, let's say, adapting to this. So the only takeaway that I will share here, I would say, is the fact to have an open mind. And probably the thing that I am thinking about now is to have this, no, it's something like this, to have a person with an open mind here. Yes, thank you. Next one.
Can I ask Richard?
Yes, of course.
This PI planning meetings is all the release trains doing it all together or separately, this PI planning?
Yes, and thank you for that, Sadiq. In fact, before entering into the PI planning meeting, you need to identify what will be the structure of your train, what teams need to compose your train. And one of the key, let's say, takeaways that M. Campbell defines is that you need to focus on what is the value stream that you are supporting with this train. And there is a long conversation regarding, let's say, in the SPC training about identifying your operational value streams and then identifying which are the development value streams, because these development value streams, behind them, they have people. And these people are the ones that need to collaborate and be together in order to reduce the amount of dependencies in order to, let's say, deliver a product. So before even thinking about a PI planning, think about organizational design. How are we going to create our train in order to reduce this amount of external dependencies? Dependencies was one of the key elements that happened in our let's say, feedback that you had. So yes, this is key. How you organize your train is key. And notice that this organization may also change in the future. So this is something that it is very challenging for. And here your HR department in the companies, they also have something to say. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, Shrekar.
Yeah.
I need to jump to another meeting as well, but again, I am very grateful for this opportunity, and I want to thank all the participants here for your great questions, and I'm happy to probably continue a conversation in the future.
Sure. So we will collect the questions, and if there will be any questions, we will reach out to you and we'll introduce.
Yes.
We'll cover this.
Yes.
So thank you again for attending this webinar. And
Have a good one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.